Hello YouTube, this is Black Thought, where I ramble podcast style about Dissidia, Final Fantasy, Opera Omnia topic. The topic for today is the content for the month of March 2021 in Global. I'm going to be doing an overview with my perspective, having played this period in the Japanese version, highlighting some gachas and outlining my pull plans and sprinkling whatever in the in-between. Before I continue, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share this content around. Additionally, drop a comment about your plans. Only 50% of my viewers on average are subscribed. I play both JP and Global, and I upload daily content. I check out all the comments, so don't be afraid to ask anything. I also do monthly JP retrospectives on content right after it finishes-ish. I'm a little late sometimes to get my initial takes. I'm going to link that as well so you can see how I felt about the content after it was fresh and how my opinions have possibly evolved since then. Everything here is my opinion and impression. Don't take it as fact. I screw things up all the time and frequently synergy stomp content, so I might miss some stuff. Always double check your sources, alright? There's a few topics I want to mention just before we get into the big stuff. Let's see. Battery reduction starts this month. Well, it doesn't actually start this month, but it's consistent this month. We actually had it on the Vincent Abyss because it was a copy paste from a future boss rush. And we had it on Jack's Lost chapter. It was 50% Brave King reduction the whole fight. If you didn't notice it, that's because it's not that big of a deal. It's hyped up because of the Medusa's fight where they kick it up to ridiculous levels during the recast, which I'll hit on later. Otherwise, battery units just aren't as ridiculous, but they're still good. Same as Brave reduction is definitely not a big deal. We're starting frame turns as well. This is new. Enemies get a turn. They get a frame around their turns in the turn order bar. They are immune to turn delay always, and always immune to turn delete. They're sometimes immune to break delay, sometimes not. It depends on the boss. It makes no boss turn runs a lot trickier. It's a conditional and it's generally obnoxious, but it's workable. It's just another mechanic to deal with. We're getting Dimensions and Transcendence this month, and again, I'm not doing those big guides just because one, I don't quite enjoy doing those anymore, and two, people usually just synergy stop them anyways, and that gets more prevalent in Transcendence. But I'll be talking about it briefly. Bringing a burst weapon, not a burst passive. So there were a lot of Galaxy Brains in JP who sold burst weapons like idiots, and they were down horrendous when Transcendence rolled around. You need the burst weapon equipped, and having the burst weapon equipped gives a synergy boost to the party, similar to how Boss Rush, if you bring a synergy character, everyone gets boosted. No burst runs are hilariously ambitious on release, and I'm safely saying this is burst content. I'll go into that more later as well. It's a slower tempo. We get them usually every other month, so you don't burn 3 units a month, but since it's every other month and it takes 6 units, you end up burning the same amount of units instead. What else? And it's pretty much focused around recent units, but again, I'll go into that later. The story's back with Act 3 of Onion Knight and then Theodore. The story is split into 2 parts, similar to the final chapter of Act 2. That's just the norm going forward. The first is a current character, generally getting an LD and burst, and the second half is usually a new character, and it will replace a character event. Start Dash's banner is to be determined. Josh seemed to hint at it on stream, but there's no way for us to tell when it's actually coming. It appears to be delayed slightly, which would suck for Keiss Lost chapter slightly because Cloud synergy, but oh well, we'll be fine. I'm gonna be playing that by ear. I'm gonna cover it assuming that it happens on time. And lastly, this is the first month that JP got HP percentages on bosses. I don't think we had wave reset either, but just to put it in perspective how long we've had that in Global. Definitely appreciate the Global devs putting early quality of life out, even though they don't always come. Rip 10 tickets. Act 3, Chapter 1, Part 1. We have Onion Knight, who is getting an LD and burst. First off, his armor. It is the DPS armor, the attack keystone, I believe it is. I never remember the names of that stuff. And he has a really loaded LD and no rework, which is fine. His LD gives him a new overhead, which is a huge attack up. I believe it's 170% total with his limit breaks on his LDs. He gets more overflow for himself. Brave and HP damage up, and party Embrave up on top of his already decent auras, which I think were attack and overflow for the party. Might have been some Embrave in there too, but I don't know. And his LD shifts party turns Ignis style and gives them a free skill use. This applies to skill 1, skill 2, and C65 even. So it's especially abusable if you have a skill recovery C65. So if you burn that there, you'll be able to get 2 skills back on a free 65, which is what I'd consider awesome. Obviously you can't for use LDs, and there's a lot of potential shenanigans here. It's a double HP attack. It's single target melee first and then AoE split HP right after. He drops an Ice Imperil as well, and Onion Knight also gets the free skill after, and the idea here is to use it on his on his C65, so he has a pretty much permanent uptime on his C65 Ice Enchant for the party. So he's got crazy utility now, crazy damage output. His call is just his regular splash blizzard. It's okay damage, and his party attack plus 20%. And his LD call has the same party manipulation effect with the free skills, etc. But there's no actual effect from it. But free skills as a call with pocket turn manipulation is incredible. That's good stuff right there. His burst is even more amazing. Wow. Well, one, he got 2 animations. The devs love him. Well, great shout out to the PSP games. If he ends his burst phase in his melee, his ninja stance, then he's going to do a double HP attack, the single target melee. But if he ends it in the magic stance, he's going to do an AoE, 100% AoE magic HP attack. And the effect is it's an attack up to whatever stance he finished in. So if you end in ninja, you're going to get a physical attack up plus 30, I think it is. I don't remember the exact numbers, but nobody cares about the exact numbers anyways. And if you ended in Sage magic mode, then you get a magic boost to your attack. On top of that, it's 50% brave damage up and 20% HP damage up, which is like Paladin Cecil's LD, which I'll cover later. Lastly, he can up the party's brave damage cap as well. So this is just a loaded burst effect. Great as a friend. Onion Knight's just stellar. He deserves obviously Paladin Cecil's extremely broken, but Onion Knight is fantastic as well. Put some respect where it's due. This man is awesome, and he's also awesome for the Lufenia. Additionally, the other one getting an update here is Gao. Gao is getting his LD boards. So on these LD boards, he gets more party attack up. His actual LD attack gets more hits and more overflow. And his counters, this is the best part about Gao's LD boards, his counters get improved. So now the Life Shaver, the heal one, it hits harder with an extra hit and heals better. Cat Scratch, the actual damage one, it gets another hit and it has splash HP, which is stellar for him. And Landslide, the LD counter, has more overflow, so it's not going to cap as hard if you get close to that cap. His call ability is a heal move. It's the Life Shaver, and it gives the caller self-attack, Embrave, and speed up. Situationally good, I guess, pocket heal. And the LD call, this is news to me, by the way. It is a party attack up and an earth enchant. It also drops the Imperil. So you can have the second earth, not even second earth, second enchant call in the game. That's awesome. I had no idea it did that. And also on top of that, it has attack and Embrave down for the enemies. That's stellar. Gao gets even better. It's not going to make him shoot to the top or anything, but he gets a decent upgrade. He's even more usable than he was before. Additionally, Alice, Saz, Cater, and Snow are getting their 80 in regular calls here. The most remarkable one is Saz here. If you have him, I don't know if this applies if he's 3/3 or not, but he does get pocket buff extend, which is good to stack with Hope and Gladio potentially for 5 turns of Gladio's LD, which is hilarious. And Cater, who is situationally useful for Self, Ice, and Chant, which I'll touch on later when I get to the Lufenia. As for my polls and thoughts, Onion Knight is a 2-week synergy. I always go for those. You should expect by now that I'm pulling. I'm hopeful for Cater dupes because I think the banner is Snow, Onion, and Cater. Onion Knight is fantastic. He killed me in a ton of Lufenia. He hits hard. He's got clutch, unique utility. No one else has come close to that party manipulation for free skills. He's a good damage dealer, and he also doubles up as an enchanter, an offensive enchanter. Those are rare, definitely valuable to pick up. Ice Absorb is pretty much non-existent, so he's good there. And even if Ice is absorbed, he's still viable. His burst effect is stupidly broken, just stupidly broken. It's so good. If you get that burst, you're gonna love it. The Paladin Cecil hype, I think, is blinding people to how fire Onion Knight is, which is ironic because he's ice. Never mind. I'm going for the LD, like I said, and I love to get the burst again. I tokened it in JP, and I used it in Transcendence too. I used them quite a bit. People have done way down the line, like different Onion Knight runs. And he remains viable for a very long time. Again, those free skills are really good. On the other banner, I already have Gao, and I'll LD board him, obviously. It gives him a nice boost, but he was, like I said, he was already plenty viable, and now he's just better. Enchant Call ability is insanely good. And while there are at least 2 instances of Earth Absorb this month, Gao will still be good. He's still viable, and just lives on. He's going to be great in the Lufenia because of the attack down and the counter heals, but I'll go into that in a second. Now the Lufenia, the dreaded Medusa's Act 3, Chapter 1 Lufenia. I hate this fight. As you saw in my community post before, man, I hate this fight. It took me days. It tilted me so bad because this fight's just ridiculous. It was the introduction of frame turns and what else? Battery reduction at the same time. And then they have, let me just go into it. I'm getting angry just think about it. The music is the only good thing about this fight. I don't even know where to start. It's not an exhaustive list. It's not an exhaustive list. Jesus, I can't talk. But this fight is very rough, so don't feel too bad about it. When they turn yellow, they get weak to magic and they get high defense. And when they turn purple, they get weak to physical and they get faster. Again, this is to sell Omnia Knight, obviously, which is with its swapping stances. Their recast ignores brave damage reduction. If you get broken by the recast, you get dispelled and petrified, which is pretty much a dead run unless you Esna it off. And even that, I don't know how viable it'd be to do that. And when the recast is up, their brave gain reduction jumps up to, it's either 80 or 90. Regardless of that 10%, it's ridiculous. Trying to battery through that is hard. And if you get broken again, like I said, and you can't battery through it, then you're just dead. They frame their own turns at some points, which means they are immune to turn delay and turn delete. And here they are additionally immune to break delay, so you can't just re-break them to get past it. So you gotta deal with this somehow. And they cleanse at some points as well. I don't know the exact points. And they get 150k warrior light shields. And on top of all this, they're imperil immune. So if you're thinking, I don't think I mentioned it, but the orb is ice. If you're thinking of, oh, I can just bring Kurosami for the ice. No, you can't, because his debuff is an ice imperil. So it is all, even framed imperils are locked out. So no Reno, no Zonde, those imperils are all dead. You can't imperil it at all. But it's an ice orb, so they want you to bring Omnia Knight. Man, wow. If you're frustrated with this fight and don't want to pull Omnia Knight, it's fine. It's permanent content. You can creep it with Celes, who comes back in a month with a rework and LD on Divine Ramu, and she's another ice enchanter. You can come back here and she helps trivialize this fight. She's very good for it. And it's also possible without Omnia Knight in the main party, but you need to get crafty with an Omnia Knight friend unit. I've seen a specific run on Discord. There was one guy, I think he did, it was a Gao, Firion, and Ramza, and then he put Cater's Ice Enchant Call on Firion, so Firion did ice damage on the off turns, and that's very smart. I expect some more GL ingenuity to shine. I hate this fight with a passion. It took me days to the point where I was, again, so tilted that I didn't commentate while I recorded. This fight's rough, man. So take your time, check in with the community, watch some YouTube runs. I'm thinking I'm going to run X-Death, Omnia Knight, and Gao, maybe, or maybe Omnia Knight, X-Death, and Ramza. I don't know. X-Death cuts through the shields, and his sustained damage on the off turns is fine. And the attack down will help us not get hit as hard, so that should be good. I'm going to play it by when I feel, yeah. Catch me when I run that, alright? And just remember, this is the fight when JP got HP damage, HP percent quality of life. So just to put in perspective how long we went without it. I don't think we have wave reset by this time either. So yeah, have fun with this fight. Don't get too frustrated. Stay frosty. Where did that come from? I don't think I've said that in like years. Arciela's lost chapter. Arciela is back, baby. She's getting support armor, so that 5% attack up and 5% HP damage cap up. Her LD is 100% AoE attack, and she gets more eye brave and attack up from her limit breaks. She's getting a new debuff. It increases damage done by Arciela only. I think it's 10%. The enemy can no longer do a brave gain, which is green numbers, so think about Yuffie's EX debuff. And it recovers one use of her skill 2, which is HP silence. So I think the proper way to open with her is to skill 1 for the free, burn a skill 2, that's a use, and then LD right after to get that up, and then her EX will be charged right after that. So she basically gets more skills, she hits harder, more eye brave, so she can abuse her fast cast better. I think that's how it sounds good on paper. Her calls, her regular call is pocket, its skill 2 is pocket HP silence, and then her other frame, which is Embrave and speed down, which is very nice if you're doing debuff stacking. Shout out to Belial. And her LD call is the same LD move, pocket no brave gain, situationally good. Sadly, no one else can benefit from the HP damage up on that debuff except Arciela, so keep that in mind. For my polls and thoughts, I am pulling. I'm also capped on tickets at the moment, so that's part of what's influencing my decision, but I like Arciela. She's got good pocket utility. Sadly, she's not even close to as meta as she was previously. They leaned harder on her utility, and my pulse in the community is telling me that she's pretty much getting skipped. And you know what? I don't blame you. I want to say she's good to have in your pocket, but at the same time, I can't necessarily think of a good reason to grab her. I don't even remember I went back and checked my YouTube history actually, and the only time I used her was on her lost chapter and the challenges right afterwards. So I don't even know what she'd be good for. Well, that's not true, because she will be good for Transcendence left node. She can work on the Transcendence 1 final node as well. And I know she's been run plenty of places, except I never felt like using her. So it's not to say she's bad, but I think I'm going to, in my New Game Plus Global, I'm going to try and run her back a little more, because I do enjoy the speed down and the debuff shenanigans sort of things. It's even harder to check if I used her call, so I can't quite think of when I'd use that as well. But again, situationally good. Now for her Lufenia, I really... I hate this fight too. It's another Dispel Orb like Beatrix, right? These guys can dispel you with an all attack like in the Chaos unless they're silenced when they turn gray. I think a lot of people haven't seen that move, because a lot of people pulled Arciela on release because she was a meta easy pull stomp content. Now she's not as popular, so this isn't a new mechanic, guys. It inflicts a nasty debuff as well. I forget what it does. They inflict the debuff at threshold as well. I'm sure there's a pattern of their buffing, but I can never figure it out. It seems random, and I'm waiting for the Macnol boss guy to figure out when these guys buff. Because if it really is random, this fight really just is trash. You can't paralyze them, you can't target lock them. Balthier is going to shine here. He's going to be eating like crazy, bruh. Because he can cleanse the party with the debuff they put on. He can steal their buffs and then dispel. Baltier's going to be fantastic here, so please run him. If you do eat the all attack, he can Esna the debuff away, and his damage up and dispels. And the turn count is relatively tight, I think, because I remember in my Beatrix, Hope, and Arciela run, the turn count was 75, and I had it at 70 and an Onion Knight Birth Friend, although I might not have been playing super effectively because there wasn't a primary damage dealer on that team, so it is what it is. I know it's also possible to damage race this one, but that's not as well. I don't like doing that personally, but I predict a lot of lightning runs and coming back and then timing the dispels, because I don't think they buff at threshold. So yeah, you just gotta play around it. What's it called? Oh yeah, try your hardest to kill them at the same time. Otherwise, the other one heals like crazy. I think it's like a 10% heal if one dies before the other and not at the same time, and it gets crazy buff. So please kill them at the same time, or you might have a dead run on your hand. I plan to run Balthier, Ramza, and Arciela for speed down stacking and dispels. Not sure if that's set in stone, but that sounds like a very fun team to run, and I'm really excited to see some creativity from the community here. Like I said, I think Vincent will be good for this one, or solid at least, workable. And I got completely proven wrong on Medusas, by the way. But especially if you stack Vincent with a Vanille Spear, I could see him doing work here. But yeah, this fight's tricky again. Dispel Orbs suck, and I'm glad. I think this is the last one ever, because I think Square Enix got the memo. So thank you guys for that. Act 3, Chapter 2, Part 2, Sayador. He is a holy damage and support hybrid character. He goes Super Saiyan and pumps out more damage. It's pretty cool lore-wise, but he pretty much has 100% uptime on his awakening thing, so don't let it fall off. And he's got conditional stuff when the party's at 100% health. He's got all auras, and his EX gets supercharged when the party is at 100% health. It's the entire party, not just him. And that EX is a nuke. It's a super nuke. It's a triple dump HP attack that hits like a truck and looks incredible. All Sayador's animations and stuff are on point. They really put a lot of love into his animations, but I don't think they put a lot of love into the actual character. His damage is all right, but again, he's a hybrid. He doesn't enchant, he just imperils his own element. And he heals the party with his LD. His spear is really good as well. It's a party heal on a crit, I believe, so that's situationally good. And his niche is Esna. He cleanses himself with skill 2, and he cleanses the party with his LD, and that's situationally good. And by situationally good, I mean his Lufenia, and then I guess Yuna's Lufenia way down the line, and then Transcendence 4. He's got solid calls. His call is a regular call is an attack and brave up that applies his framed Holy Imperil and a chance to call her with Holy, so it's good for a decent damage spike. And his LD call is Pocket Cleanse, and then it heals the party, and then nukes, which is also nice. Let's see, my pulls and thoughts. I'm skipping him hard. Man, I free pulled his LD and JP and token him, built him, etc. I can never really justify using him. And while I could justify Arciela kinda, I hate saying this, but his damage gets immediately crept by Squall, who isn't tied to an element with annoying upkeep on his aura. Well, Squall doesn't have auras, obviously, and he can't heal the party. But Squall also doesn't have any conditionals on his damage. He's just a nuke. His HP condition is very obnoxious, because the feeling when you get to use his EX and the party's not at 100% HP is so annoying. And you can offset it with his C65, which heals the party, but even then you might miss it. it just doesn't feel good to use, and he just feels kind of awkward. Esna is very limited in use. Like I said, the future Esna orbs are Uniburst event and Transcendence 4. We can definitely be used, and he's still got okay damage. Don't get me wrong. He's best paired with his father on the next event. So you have Sayador. You definitely should grab Paladin Cecil to keep him overhealed. Don't get it twisted though. He definitely outdamages his dad by far, and he's got a super high damage ceiling, but he's also got a really obnoxious setup cost. And I try not to play up absorbs because it's usually overblown, but the Holy Absorb coming up is very real. There's a decent chunk of Holy Absorb as well in the next 2 months. We have Eldnar's Lost Chapter, RNA's event, Trey's Lost Chapter, Omnia Detellion's Lost Chapter, Terra's Chapter Lufenia counters all elements period, Garland's Burst Raid, and Transcendence 2. That's what, 8 fights in the next 2 months, and as a hybrid damage dealer is shut out, which is obnoxious. Blame his dad. Thanks a lot, devs. Not much room for Sayador to shine, unfortunately, which is another complaint I had about Vincent, which I hate that they do this. Thankfully in JP they've trended away from the resist now, but yeah, it's just something to be aware of if you're going for Sayador. He's going to be hurting a lot of content. I personally think he's just kind of mediocre. His damage outside of his EX is just okay, and the hybrid utility doesn't really shine that well, I don't think. If you like him, go for him. Make him work, show his strengths, but I'm not a fan personally. Great animations though. He's Zenitsu's voice from Demon Slayer, and I love that show. The Lufenia now, oh boy. The orb is Esna, woo boy, yeah. There are some goofy centipedes, they're immune to HP silence and Arciela synergy, so that's great. They're immune to paralyze and their own debuffs, and they absorb thunder and earth. So sorry Guy, sorry Gao, sorry Lightning, sorry Reno, the list goes on. Maybe someone will make Vincent work, shout out to you if you do that, because I don't see it being pretty. Anywho, the recast, it dispels the leftmost buff, which is very annoying. And it drops a permanent HP poison debuff, and the recast ignores HP damage reduction. They do a giant brave gain at HP thresholds, and they also cleanse debuffs, and they target all, and they have a double HP attack, so you want to cut their brave down as fast as possible or else you are going to get blown up. They also have a mode where they resist all weapon types, so you have to hit weakness or else you're just going to do horrible damage. It is possible to DPS race this one down again, but it is somewhat tricky and not easily accessible, especially because Lightning is not not favored here. Pocket Pinello is great for the Esna route if you are going to DPS race. Otherwise, she's also very good in the party for the orb. Sayador obviously makes the orb a joke, but he's not that popular, and I'm wondering how people will deal with him. Again, this is permanent content. Yuna, I used Yuna here in JP. I used Yuna, Gladio, and Sayador. I'm sure it's also possible with Yuna, Gladio, and Onion Knight, but I'm not going to subject myself to that again because that was a pain. Balthier is going to eat here because he Esna's himself and the party. Cyan can handle the orb as well. There have been Cyan runs, but again, Pinello's great in the party. But Balthier especially, you're going to see a lot of Balthier runs, and if you pulled Balthier, you're gonna pat yourself on the back here because he's going to clap it. Otherwise, the debuff is annoying, but as long as you manage the Esna at a reasonable pace or you DPS it, race it down at a reasonable pace, this should be manageable, but I think this fight is just obnoxious as well. And the music tends to get hit by copyright, so if you're running this on YouTube, you probably want to mute the game. Anyways, I plan to run Balthier. Actually, who else am I gonna run? Christ, maybe I'm gonna run Ramzug. No, the Dispel's annoying. I actually don't know. Maybe I'm gonna run Balthier, Onion, and maybe Pinello to double up on the orb, get some damage in between, but we'll see how I deal with that. Good luck, everyone. Again, don't stress out over it. It is permanent. You can come back later. Now we have the Wyrm raid with Paladin Cecil's LD and Burst. This man is hyped for a good reason. He's getting his LD, and this is loaded. He's got a double HP attack, split damage twice, drops Holy Imperil and overheals the party. He gets a new overhead as well. He gets a huge defense up for the party, more HP regen. He ups the HP overflow, so regen and burst heals can recover above 30% of your max HP. When the party member that's attacking is currently at or above full HP, they get 20% HP damage reduction, 50% brief damage dealt up, which is like Saw's overhead levels, 20% HP damage up. This is pretty close to a burst effect, honestly. And he gets a free skill use afterwards, which he can pretty much use to sustain his Holy Enchant the entire fight on his C65. This is super loaded. Brave damage up on top of enchant means you hit hilariously hard, the party does, on everything, provided that the content allows Imperil and it's not Holy Absorb. His burst is even more ridiculous, although not nearly as loaded, but still good. Brave damage up 50% again, gained overflow 20%, more HP regen, and you get HP based brave regen. And at 100% HP and higher, your Brave and HP caps get raised. So he's got conditionals, but the conditionals are so easy to meet that it's just big damage. His calls aren't that great, unfortunately, but you're usually running Cecil in the main party anyways. His regular call is just a burst heal and defense up, and his LD call is another huge defense up, and it's an overheal. So good if you need heals, but you don't necessarily want Cecil in the party at the time. Additionally, Camelot is getting his LD boards. He gets a double HP attack with refund in between that hits harder. It's still single target though, but it splashes and does more damage now on his LD. He applies Addle, his 3-turn, attack down debuff when he uses LD, so you don't have to wait to get hit for it. You can just get it up off the bat. His overhead lasts longer. He's got additional party attack aura, so he becomes a little bit more beneficial in the party. Skill 1 becomes plus right after he uses LD. So he can chain LD into guaranteed free paralyze, which is fantastic if you plan it correctly. Brave Plus gets 50% gravity before hitting, which makes it easier to land a break and abuse the paralyze. His LD call is fantastic. It's one of the best in the game for a while. It applies Addle, which is probably the least significant part, but good for attack down stacking if you really are interested in that. Whoever the caller gets, I think it's 6 turns or maybe it's 3 turns. I don't know exactly. You'll see. It's 30% brave refund after every turn after the HP attack, which is incredible for like burst phases. So imagine you're Onion Knight and then you do 100 HP damage, 100k HP damage, and then you're gonna get 30% of that back. It's great for returning Brave and doing a lot of damage in burst phases and just consecutive damage dealers. I don't know if it applies to off-turn damage units. I never tested it. I probably should go do that, but that'd be fantastic as well. Great LD call. Even if you don't use him that far, I use his LD call for months, and although I try to run Cam as much as possible, he gets some really good upgrades here, so shout out to them. Now for my thoughts and my pulls, well, obviously, I think everyone should pull Paladin Cecil. He's amazing. It's not necessary to hunt his burst, but man, this dude is something else. He's so powerful that a sizable chunk of Holy Absorb is coming, like I mentioned with Sayador, Eld's Lost Chapter, RNA's event, Trey's Lost Chapter, Terra's Chapter Lufenia countering elements, Ami Detelian's Lost Chapter, Garland's Burst rated Transcendence 2. However, unlike his damage-oriented son, if there's Imperil immunity, Paladin Cecil can still function as an aura bot, and he's still very good. But even in an Absorb, you might even be able to justify him anyways, but just don't turn the enchant on. People will probably do it anyways, that's my prediction. He is nearly vital in Transcendence 1, and it's so ridiculously hard to do it without his LD. So for your sanity, unless you want to really challenge yourself, I would say grab Paladin Cecil for that. He's got insane longevity in the meta. Per usual, he can't carry you through Lufenia. You still need to deal with orbs and mechanics. I mean, the left node for Transcendence is Holy, and the middle second wave is to stay above 100% HP damage, so he's good for that. Then there's some HP regen orbs down the road, but he can be used for that as well. But anyways, he's pretty much the perfect glue to hold teams together, provided you can hit the orb and Holy is not absorbed. Ryman accidentally. In fact, if you ignore the enchant and bring him in absorb fights, he might be workable anyways, like I said. Cam's Lost Chapter LD call is incredible, and if you're wealthy and you're okay pulling for calls, it's a decent option. Attack down is situationally good, and stacking it is very fun as well. Cam is a lot smoother now, and he won't necessarily shine anywhere. Maybe some paralyzed orbs or stun stuff, or just fights where you don't want to get nuked, but he'll live on as a fantastic call. So definitely a solid upgrade for Cam. I'm gemming Paladin Cecil. I need him for Transcendence. Well, I don't need him, but I don't want to I don't want to slam my head against that stupid fight. I'm not gonna chase his burst though. Not chasing burst out here because I've had it and I think I can live without it. But it's real good to have, like I said. Lufenia is the Hell Wyrm. It is Thunder and Earth Absorb again. So sorry, Guy. Sorry, Gao. It's Ice and Holy Week. Sorry, Vincent, although, again, someone might make him work here. It might be possible, because this stage isn't terribly difficult, so in spite of Absorbs, you might be able to force people through. Anyways, it's also magic resist. The Orb is to burst heal, and it's +7 per healed unit, which is hilariously easy to upkeep. It's got some dangerous attacks, but I expect most to coast through this with Paladin Cecil, because he really just trivializes this fight. The boss is actually hilariously easy if you're in Paladin Cecil, because you're never in terrible danger. The boss recast is potentially dangerous. It dispels your generics and ignores reductions and cleanses debuffs after the attack. And the way you're supposed to mitigate this is attack down and defense up, which both Camelot and Paladin Cecil provide, and it resummons a Maria Mannequin. The Maria Mannequin can just kill you if its recast is up. So if you can gain Brave or you can tank the attack, it could be alright, but you should probably just take her down before that happens. I don't expect Mighty to struggle here because Paladin Cecil, but something really big here is to farm Paladin Cecil's RF spears like crazy. You wanna farm as many of these as possible because there's an update to the way Brave gain armor works down the road, that makes Paladin Cecil's RF Spear insanely valuable. So burn all of your white crystals farming Paladin Cecil. God, I can't talk today. Farming Paladin Cecil's RF Spear. You will thank me later. I'm working on a video to show off why it's so important. But the TLDR is that it can spice individual Brave gains from like normal levels to plus like 80 or 90%. So farm a lot of those RF spears. If I could go back in time in JP and farm these, I will go completely empty on crystals. I can't emphasize this enough. Farm those Paladin Cecil RF spears. Now I'm gonna briefly touch on the Start Dash banner. In the time it came in JP was right after Paladin Cecil. It doesn't look like it's gonna be coming in global around this time, but I'm gonna cover it for now anyways, just to cover my bases. Lightning is getting, well, there's triple LD boards. I'm gonna go from most underwhelming to least underwhelming. Lightning LD boards first. She gets refund in between her HP attacks on her LD, and that's it. Her LD call isn't anything special besides damage and a rebreak. No effect, and the LD boards will probably get reworked down the line. But yeah, Lightning isn't quite doing much more. She's still a force of nature, but that's pretty much just like a sentence of an LD board. So sorry, Lightning fans. This is what you get for her being this ridiculous. Cloud's LD boards are a near permanent overhead. Functionally, it's a permanent overhead. He gets M-Brave and physical attack up with HP damage dealt up by 20%. It procs every time it goes up again once every time he gets a crit, which is pretty much all the time because Cloud crits a lot. Blade Beam is a double HP attack, and his LD call is great for delay, and it's good for damage, but there's no effect on it. Now for the meat of what's happening with the Start Dash. We have Squall's LD boards and rework, and man, it feels like a century ago I made my laughing at Squall haters video, because man, that was a fun time when Squall did Rough Divide and then he did it again. Yeah, check that out. There were people who thought Squall was gonna suck again, and then they you surely know by now how ridiculous he is, but I'll cover it anyways. He gets 2 more skill ones, and he has 2 HP attacks with splash at the end. So he does his initial brave attacks that are single target HP attack, and then the final hit, which is AOE hits, and then he does splash afterwards. He gets 3 more skill 2, and he gets more overflow on Renzo as well. Squall has no skill issues anymore. He can spam skills the entire battle and just never run out. His LD board adds 20% HP damage up to his overhead, and he has LD buff start as well. He does a weaker Rough Divide after every single time he does an HP attack, which steroids his output, and it speaks for itself, but Squall is broken. His calls, Renzo, skill 1, he does the regular Renzo animation for some reason. It does nice damage, it's a good damage call, and it does attack and M-Brave up for the caller, and his LD call is just damage, but it does a lot of damage. I thought about it, and I think I might gem this one and go for Squall's Burst. It'd be nice to pick up Lightning's Burst along the way, and if I can get any Burst dupes, that will be a bit more valuable. Having Lufenia Plus and JP has kind of changed my mind on hunting bursts on banners like these, because the the bursts come back with Burst Plus, and they're split across banners, and having more bursts would be good. And I have so many gems, I don't even know what I'm saving for, so it'll be a fun gamble. Maybe in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have chased Cloud's Burst as hard as I did, but it is what it is. Again, I don't know when this is going to be in global, but it was between Keiss Lost Chapter and Paladin Cecil's raid in JP, and I'm looking forward to Squall coming back because that man is hilarious. He does so much damage. Keiss Lost Chapter. Keiss is getting an 80 in LD. His 8 I can't speak. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with my mouth? Context. His LD is a double HP attack with splash, and his debuff is a sap, which is pretty negligible, and it's a party brave gain based on chase damage after a chase is initiated. So you do all your damage in chase. I forget how much the refund is, but say you do 100k damage while you're in the air. Regardless of who does it, the party gets a refund afterwards based on how much damage you do. And he gets a special HP attack afterwards for using his LD that is pretty unremarkable. I didn't even bother listing it because no one cares. You barely HP attack with Keiss to begin with. His call ability is regular one is skill 2 to set up a launch, situationally useful. And his LD call drops his LD debuff, which is great. You don't always need him around in chase teams if you can just drop his although he is very good on chase teams. Square Enix Airlines, chase meta rising again. But if you're running, he lasts way in the future if you're doing chase-ish comps. Drop his LD buff and get him out of there. My opinion to polls, Keiss is fantastic once again. He's not as meta defining, but he's essential for launch comps, and he's more niche, but that niche is very strong. He didn't get much on paper, but he got exactly what he needed, which is a damage buff for launch-centric teams. I think people finally understand that Keiss is not a launcher, he is a launch enabler. Even down the road, as it gets harder to justify him in the party, like I said, his LD call is elite for launch comps as the debuff just sticks around. I'm going to ticket him now. He runs on the same banner as Lael's LD and Burst, so if you're not terribly interested in him right now and trying to save, you can potentially try and grab him on that double LD banner. Although I try not to live too hard in the future, and chances to get Paladin Cecil's Burst are great, so I am pulling. Keiss is also fantastic for Transcendence, the upcoming one, and what's it called? His own Lost Chapter, obviously. The Lufenia is Magic Resist, it's Holy Weak, and Dark Absorb. Sorry, Dark Cecil, I think it's possible to fit him in here regardless, but they didn't want you to use him here, I guess. It's a simple orb on paper, you need to deal launch. However, there's a bit more nuance to the fight now. It's immune to poison, speed down, sap, turn rate down, terror, and sleep. The turn count is hilariously tight at 55 turns. You super need launch, probably. You might be able to get away. You might be able to get away with it on the Chaos, but now it's kind of sketchy to do it without launch. And Cloud is synergy. Popular team was just Cloud, Keiss, someone. Like the Chaos, they get break delay immunity at some point when they join. You need to launch them to get rid of it. And when they're green, they get an HP poison aura, and if they act, they dispel you, and it might just flat out kill you. You need to do enough damage in chase, similar to Divine Diablos, to get rid of this. And I think you need to do 200k in a chase to make them get out of green mode. And this is individually, so you need to do it to them both. Otherwise, just blow them up. I'm thinking about running Cloud, Keiss, Cryl to abuse the meme strategy with Cryl EX mid burst. Should be a good time. Nothing really remarkable. This fight is a punching bag if you have the right team, but if you don't, it's a nightmare. It's going to be pretty polarizing. But I know a lot of people have Keiss. Keiss EX only might work, so that's something to be considerate of. Yeah, Keiss good. Good for Transcendence. Not much else to say about him. Pretty straightforward character. Y'all know how he works by now. And the last part of the month, we have Transcendence, Dimensions and Transcendence, Tier 1. The featured character here is going to be Gabrant. He's getting an 80. LD and a rework. His rework is battery based on damage dealt to the party with skill 1, and he gets more uses of skill 1 as well. I think that's it. His LD is a triple HP attack that insta/rebreaks provided target has his transformed frame debuff, aka 4 debuffs active, and he gets another self attack and Embrave up on it, as well as party HP damage reduction. I think it's 30%. His calls, for his regular call, it's attack and defense down generic, not really significant on its own, but if he's purple and he has debuff start, this is functionally 10% HP damage up in a call with 4 debuffs up, including his, I think he's the first HP damage up debuff in global, and his LD call sadly doesn't re-break, but it is nice damage, and it's good for getting his frame back up, provided you're running other debuffs so you can proc it, the HP damage up again. It's also an okay attack/Embrave boost. It's mostly good for HP damage up as an option. For my thoughts and pulls, I plan on pulling Gabrant. He's very helpful in Transcendence 1 for the insta-break. There's debuff orbs, and his HP damage reduction helps you from getting blown up. He's not the greatest in the party going forward, but he lives on as a stellar call as an HP damage up. He's helpful for farming Divine Brothers down the road as well, seeing as he's on a separate banner from Cloud to Darkness, and I had the resources and he's solid, so let's go for it. Still the best EX animation in the game. Now to dive a little deeper into Transcendence as a whole, and then I'll go into the actual stages. But I'm not doing guides for these, but this is a quick primer hitting the important parts on it. It's permanent content, there's a co-op and limited time rewards. It's another substitute for character events similar to Boss Rush. The content is heavily tuned to recent units, which will become obvious. There's crystal requirements, and you can tell which crystal you should bring by looking underneath the stage. And I'm confident saying that this is burst content on release. Bring a burst to give the party synergy stats. I do not recommend trying to smash your head on the wall trying to get around it. It is possible, I know, to do the right side without a burst, but the middle stage, which ultimately matters, I don't know if there's any non-burst runs for that. So just bring your burst, guys. Why make it harder than you need to be? These stages do lock your characters out. There's 2 Lufenias, which are being named to Crucible quests on the left and right. Like I said, they lock your characters out and throughout the entire stages. The center Lufenia, the Reckoning quest, must be done with units you've used on the left and right Crucible. So say you use 3 units on the left, 3 units on the right, you got to pick from those 6 that you've used on the left and right to do the final one. My approach for team building for Transcendence goes like this. First, you want to deal with the orb, obviously. If you don't deal with the orb, then you're done. Then you bring a burst that works there, and then you fill in the rest of the gaps, all right? If you don't do it on release, it's fine. At max, you'll miss 20 tickets, although it does get sketchy doing it not on release because usually it's pretty hardcore tuned to the recent units. And this one specifically is hard tuned to like Paladin Cecil, Gabrant, and Cloud, for example. There's 3 burst tokens in total for completing a tier, the entire tier, and 60 high armor tokens. Both are permanent, so you don't need to worry about those. And don't claim the burst tokens immediately. They can sit there indefinitely. In fact, it's perfectly timed in global, because if you've been doing all the challenge quests so far, then you should be able to knock this out. There's also an additional token you can get, because there's a Chaos and a Cosmos. There's a Cosmos co-op you can do here, because it's an event, and there's a challenge. There's a Transcendence challenge quest as well. Now let's get right into the fights. So the left Crucible, that's weird to say, the left Crucible is the Zac Lost chapter boss. It's super duper tanky, holy crap. It's a holy damage orb, and the crystal requirement is white. Guess who they want you to bring? It's possible to bring Kuja for the holy requirement, but it's a lot harder. The turrets hit really, really hard, and they get phases where they gain a ridiculous amount of brave and take 1 damage, and they need to get broken to reset it. You can eat the attack with mitigation, or gravity insta-break it to get around it. So, like, say for example, if you bring Beatrix and you Paladins protect right before the attack, then they go to 0 and you can break them right after. Or you can Gabronth. That's what they want you to do. They want you to bring Gabronth and skill 2 or LD or EX and just pop them. Jack works as well, I think, for this, and Arciela, so they don't gain brave at all. There's a ton of options to get around it. They hit hard overall and love to do an annoying all HP attack. They blow up. What's that noise? They blow your generics up. This fight's semi-obnoxious, and the turns are kind of tight too, relatively, depending on your team. Paladin Cecil plus Gabronth, and a third is the path of least resistance here. As such, I plan to run Paladin Cecil for the holy and the crystal requirement, Gabronth for the instant break, and someone. Depends on us if I get Paladin Cecil's burst, because if I don't get his burst by then, I think I'll just run Ramza, maybe for the free turns and other Ramza shenanigans and the burst synergy. We'll figure it out. As for the right Crucible, we have the Barret Turtles, but now they're worse. This is a blue crystal requirement, and they're selling Cloud hard here. It's another launch orb as well. The turtles go into shell and they get massive brave reduction. I think you just do ones, and they need to be launched to go back to normal. Provided you can manage your launches and not get bodied by the turtles, this one isn't horrible. If you have Keiss, you can handle your launch needs. I know it's possible to do this one burstless without it's Jack, Kryl for the blue, and Keiss, and it's possible to do this without a burst, but again, or you could just bring Cloud or Ramza here for the launches and Prosper here. You can bring any burst, really, just as long as you're hitting the orb. And I'm probably going to go Cloud, Keiss, and Kryl for launch memes, just like I plan to do in Keiss's Lost Chapter. And now for the center node, the Reckoning. This stage right here, this is the doozy. Pick from whoever you used in the left and right stages. This stage is long and it's tanky, even with the burst. So I wouldn't recommend trying to smash your head against this, because you're going to get frustrated. The first wave is the Ultimecia bosses. The orb is to inflict 2 debuffs in 1 turn. It's not plus 10, plus 5 like it was in Keiss's Lost Chapter, it's just plus 2. Gabronth makes this orb non-existent, as his debuffs reactivate after the party is attacked. So that's how they're selling him hard. This stage is very, very synergy biased. Otherwise, you need debuff span, and probably you need to burst and or summon in the first wave in order to DPS them down so you don't have to deal with the orb. They also get a brave gain phase, just like the normal fight, where you don't do any damage and you gotta instant break, or you gotta pop them somehow. I think you get dispelled if you don't break them, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure, but you really need to deal with it somehow. And then the second wave is a new boss. It is the Flame Mask, and it's fire absorbed. So say you brought Vincent to the left one. That's why I don't think it's a good idea to bring Vincent to this, because even though he might be good on the left side, if you try to get him through the second phase, or the Crucible, the Reckoning. Jesus, localizations. This was fire absorb, and he'll be at. Just don't do it. I don't recommend it. But if someone pulls it off, shout out to you. You're the goat. The orb needs you to be at or above 100% HP, which is again screaming Paladin Cecil. But wait, there's more. At HP thresholds, they go into a mode where they reduce brave and HP damage. They have an HP poison aura, and they regen their own HP, and it's a sizable regen. I don't know how much it is, but it's big, and you got to launch them to turn it off. So you need to stay above full HP to pause the orb, because the orb doesn't increase, I believe. I think it just pauses, and you need to launch them to turn it off. Staggering this is very obnoxious. Didn't think this orb would be easy to upkeep, did you? The path of least resistance on this stage is once again Paladin Cecil LD. Very crucial here. Really, it is possible without him. Don't get it twisted, but man, it is rough. Path to least resistance. Paladin Cecil will keep your HP overhealed to keep doing the orb, and then it's a matter of how you're going to launch. This stage is hilariously restrictive again, and it took me a bit, so have fun with it. I certainly didn't have fun on release. A bunch of resets, but it is possible. I'm probably just going to copy my exact JP team here and sleep. Paladin Cecil, Cloud, and Gabranth, and it should be done. And that's it. Closing thoughts. Let's see. Lots of fun stuff this month on the horizon. This month is pretty loaded. My poll plans: Onion Knight LD, Arciela LD, Paladin Cecil LD, Keiss LD, and Gabranth LD. Sorry, Sayadora, you're the odd one out. And I'm gonna probably go deep on the Start Dash banner for Squall's Burst and potentially Lightning's Burst along the way. What I'm most excited for, most of the fights this month, as I struggled in JP, and it's fun to run it back and be able to read and do these fights a lot more easily now that I'm well versed in the fights and know they work. These overviews help me prepare as well. And that's really it. I don't have much to say. Have fun with Transcendence. That'll be a doozy. I'm really excited to see what creativity people pull off on that stage. Really, really excited. Global ingenuity, like I always say, pulls through. And now, this is it. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share the video around, and drop a comment about your plans. I'll be reading all the comments, so don't hesitate to drop one. I got you. I'll catch you guys later. Good luck this month. Peace.